Hi guys, this is Sam64, and just before this video begins, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you for the enormous reaction to the first two podcasts. It's been honestly mind-blowing for myself and Anderson. We never really thought this would be a big thing in the first place, so from that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. As well as that, this video does contain spoilers. We didn't mention this in the video, so if you haven't seen the episode of Robot Wars yet, there's a link down to episode 2 in the description. If you haven't seen it already, if you're from the UK, you can watch this link. If you're not from the UK, there is a YouTube video out there. I'm not going to put that in the description due to various copywriting things. However, if you look hard enough, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Okay? Enjoy the video. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sam64, and I'm joined alongside, once again,
Anderson9132.
And today, obviously, we have many special guests planned for the rest of the series, but this one is particularly special to us because, let's face it, his fashion sense is amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, from Team Nuts, Dave Lawrie. Hello, Dave.
Hi guys, how are you?
Oh, very good. And
Very good.
And it's kind of crazy for us to bring you a guest that was actually on the series. We never expected that to happen, but
Oh, it's my pleasure.
well, there you go. Thank you very much again. Anyway,
Thank you very
we must move on to the matter at hand, which is Heat 2 of Robot Wars 2016, airing on the 31st of July 2016. From my point of view, this actually was a better Heat than the first one. Obviously, no disrespect to you, of course, Dave. You were in the first one, but for me, it was just better put together. I thought the editing was a lot smoother. Everything was just a lot more clean for me.
Yeah,
I agree. Oh, sorry, you go, Dave. Go ahead.
the comments about the editing I've heard quite a lot. The editing's been a lot smoother and stuff. I think in general this Heat is kind of crazy, and I think it's harking back a lot to those old Heats where you didn't know so much about the robots and kind of literally anything could happen.
I was going to say, like, in terms of the competitors, a lot of them were new to the, obviously not new to like the people on the live tour and things like that, but very new to the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we saw robots that come through that we would never have really expected to do well.
Yeah, it was a very good Heat. I definitely agree with what you say about it being better than the last week's Heat. I felt the battles were a bit more crisper, with the exception of one. We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Honestly, it felt much more like the original show, but not so much that it wasn't its own unique concept this time. Everything seemed like a little more crisper, more smoother. JP's commentary was a little bit better this time. All in all, it was a better Heat, in my opinion, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was surprising. Again, with respect to everyone involved, I think that the Heat itself, the quality of the robots weren't as high as the first week's. And
well,
I think
it's interesting from a behind the scenes point of view. I guess. I was thinking about it today. I guess I'm your pit reporter. I guess I'm the Philippa.
I was going to say thanks, Philippa.
So feel free to call me that.
Okay,
but there were two robots in this Heat that started off as reserves. I don't think I'm giving away too much.
I believe Team Danby mentioned on Twitter that Chimera was one of them.
Yes.
I believe
originally, if we're going to Team Danby, they initially even they were a reserve.
Yeah, I'm amazed by that because I know on the live tours it's a completely different thing to who gets selected for the show. They're two completely different things. But I've always found that Foxic has always been quite a popular robot on the live tours, and you'd have thought maybe they'd try and play to that, but that surprises me a lot.
Yeah, I think they were just outside the bracket because someone else lost out and Craig ended up getting the first call, so he wasn't a reserve on the day like the other guys were. He was officially in by then, but I have personal ties with Mr. Danby, so and I promised I wouldn't come on here and kind of big him up. But he's a great guy and he does build kind of interesting robots.
I was going to say he's been so unlucky in the past with so many different designs, and I think this is the first time he's ever been on the main show. I think it was on Extreme once, was he? Am I right in saying that?
He had a featherweight. There's a brief clip of him in one of them.
It was in the Extreme 2 featherweights, wasn't he? And
Yes.
he got smashed up pretty quick.
In fact, he was in two. There was one where his featherweight broke down and he had to put in the tiniest robot I have ever seen.
Oh yeah, that little Anto thing.
And Sir Killalot picked it up and dumped it out the arena. And then he got back in. He got back into the other featherweight competition, and his robot didn't work very well there either.
Was it his brother who entered Anto?
Go ahead.
Because his brother entered a robot called Anto in the first ever Antweight battle, and it was that Craig as well. I can't remember.
Craig builds Anto. I've had many a run in with Anto because that's where I met Craig. I met Craig on the Antweight circuit. He's beaten me so many times, and Anto's such a kind of popular little winning Antweight. It just doesn't always contrive to the heavyweight category.
Yeah. Well, back to Heat 2, if I may. I think one thing I was really happy about with Heat 2, and I think this was probably where I saw the marked improvement, was the house robots got involved a lot more. And I really like that. I mean, obviously in Heat 1, again, the standard robots were better, so I think that's why we didn't see as much house robot action. However, I'm very, Dead Metal was on it in this episode. I really, he was causing problems, and obviously Anderson being a massive Dead Metal fan, I bet you were happy with that.
I was very happy, smiling from ear to ear. Oh yes.
Yeah. So I think we should move on to the battle, shall we? I think there's not really much to say this week, because obviously last week we were discussing Dara and Angela presenting, which, by the way, this week again Dara I felt was much better. Angela again excellent.
Yes, I must admit. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Oh, thank you. But basically, yeah, I agree. Dara seems a lot more mellowed into it this heat. Definitely seems to be more invested, which is good. I think, obviously, like I said, just a bit rusty from the first go, but he's definitely seemed to have mellowed out for this heat.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, you were going to say?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a kind of handing over the baton field to the series where the first episode everyone's judging it by previous, whereas by week 2 you're kind of getting used to Dara and Angela. They kind of got their own style, and you're kind of sitting there going, oh, this is actually working really well, and you give them more of a chance than you did on initial reaction, I think, because it's slightly older now and people are getting used to it. And I think as the series goes on, everyone will warm to them so much. I mean, we all did when we were.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone and their grandma would have loved to have seen Craig back. I myself included. It'd been nice, but again, with this style of show, it's more. It's not documentary, but it's very similar. It's kind of like a blend between entertainment and documentary, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think
it's no longer just solely entertainment. It's more treated more as a sport these days than it is just as an entertainment game show. That's basically what the first series was just a game show.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's more of a sport these days, so they have to sort of find that fine balance between entertainment and sport.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I think I think Dara works better for that style of video, really. I'm not video. For TV show, really. That's I got confused there. Of the TV show rather than Craig Charlesworth, because I think. I don't know, he just wouldn't suit the role. Anyway, as I said, we must move on to the battle. So our first fight of the night saw Disconstructor, Shockwave, Thor, and Tough as Nails. For me, by far the stronger lineup of the two.
Yeah.
And I feel so sorry for Disconstructor. I'm sorry. They was it 15 seconds the first time? How long did they last this time? I think because I know they cut the interview with Disconstructor in the control bar. I think they did last slightly longer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't much longer.
It wasn't long. And the thing about those guys is they'd improved the robots so much. They put up on their Facebook page, they put up this joke about how Robot Wars had used exactly the same angle of picture for Disconstructor that they'd used back in Series 7. And there was no difference whatsoever.
Oh,
yet they'd updated all the armor, updated all the motors, and they just Will Thomas with Shockwave just did not give them a chance to show it.
I will say one thing that we definitely did see with Disconstructor, it did get a cool hit on Tough as Nails, but I think were they suffering from control problems as well after the floor flipper flipped them, or was it just a case of Shockwave was on them and just pushing them around straight away?
I seem to remember those guys struggling with grip.
Well, a lot of teams did have grip problems, didn't they?
They're struggling nowadays.
Yeah.
Because obviously they used to a wooden floor on the live circuit, a lot of them. So obviously a steel floor is a little bit different. So it provides less grip.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure that'll be something that can be addressed for next series, but in terms of everyone using probably grippier tires, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Any further thoughts on Disconstruct? I mean, I was a bit disappointed because I thought it had potential to win the heat, really, didn't it? Let's face it, it's got such a good disc on the front now.
Yeah, it's a real shame that their best hit was on the wall.
I was gonna say, yeah, it sent it flying across the arena, but it was nice to see them back, and I hope they keep working on it because it had such good potential, and it was in a tough draw. It had a very tough draw.
Well, they were the other reserve, by the way, in this heat. They didn't initially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they weren't initially in, and there was a bit of shuffling, and I've been cleared to give you.
So who were the two that were originally meant to be in this heat, other than Chimera and Disconstructor? Can you reveal that?
I've been trying to rack my brains remembering which of the reserves was actually in this heat. I know that Overdoser was originally in this heat.
Really?
In with Tough as Nails, Shockwave, Thor, and Overdoser was the original lineup.
That would have been a bloodbath.
Yeah. Well, Overdoser they had trouble. They had to drop out, and then they became first reserve, and then they got inserted into the next heat. There was loads of that going on.
That's very strange because, myself and Anderson have made our thoughts clear on Overdose. It's a bit backwards thinking, but it's still a pretty interesting entry all the same.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys. I've got to give a shout out here to a guy called Haz, who you won't see very much of on the TV because he's camera shy. But me and Haz was so into Overdoser. It was hilarious because before it turned up, they had the little names on the pit benches.
Yeah.
And there was this robot called Overdoser, and Will Thomas from Shockwave was spending ages debating what it was going to be because he liked it. And he was going, I think it might be an axe or it might be a bulldozer, but we're a bulldozer, so they're not likely to put another bulldozer in, so I'm not sure what it is.
Was there a lot of that? Was there a lot of second guessing? Obviously you didn't all turn up at the same time, and obviously you didn't know everyone's design specifically. So was there a lot of guessing what might turn up?
Team Nuts were the second to turn up on the day.
Oh right, yeah.
And we got there before they'd even put the names out.
Oh wow.
There was just us and Mr. Speed Squared on the next bench. So we set up, and they went around at one point and put all the names out.
Yeah.
And I just wondered about going, who have we got then? I'm the biggest fan in the world, so we were just wondering about going, I don't recognise that one, and I don't know who that is. And
on a bit of a tangent here, I have to ask you personally, what was your reaction when you saw Razor and Terahertz in your group?
Sorry, that's a pretty interesting question. And Carbide in the same heat.
Yeah, what were you? What was your immediate reaction? Did you think, "Oh my god"?
Well, it was odd, really, because we turned up, and we spent a long time trying to find out who was in our heat. And one of the first things we found out was Carbide was in our heat, or we heard rumblings about it. There was this rumor,
right?
And we'd heard about Carbide.
Yeah.
So we kind of went, "Oh well, that's us then."
As it turned out, it was you in the end. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then what happened was the guy came over with the sheet and told us that we were actually in the other battle with Razor and Terahertz, which isn't much better. But we were so relieved at that point. We were, oh, good, we've got Razor and Terahertz. That's so much better than what we could have done.
I have to say as well. Okay, there's a big. It's not really a stigmatism, I'd say, but there's a big belief around the Roboteers nowadays. Obviously, I think people are a bit irritated in the sense that Razor still gets banged on about a lot, and I think that's fair enough because it was the robot of the original series. Let's be real here; it really was.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're still a bit scared? Is there still a fear to fighting Razor? Obviously, it's completely backwards in terms of technology in the robot now, but it's the thing is it's still Razor. You always get the thing somehow it's going to win somehow.
No, I think when we found out we were fighting it, as I say, the first reaction was quite relieved because as much as Razor could have done anything they wanted with us, they could have but at the end of the day, it's an absolute privilege of a battle to be involved in. And then the guys turned up. They were quite late to proceedings. Ian and Simon came in, and we were chatting to them, and they were really kind of mutually respectful of all the robots there. There was no ego. And then, they said that they were thinking that probably this might be Razor's last run out. And we kind of went, oh, well, we're in possibly the last ever Razor battle. So why wouldn't you want to be involved in that?
Very good point.
What a way to end. Jesus.
Personally, I hope it's not. Yeah, personally, I hope it's not, because I think it'd be. I'm sure you'll agree with this, Dave. Even though it ended up you going through, I'm sure there's a feeling inside that like you want to see Razor. Obviously, every single competitor, as far as I'm aware, believe that they can beat Razor now.
Yeah.
I want to see all of them prove it. I want to see them go out there and prove that they can do it.
Yeah.
It's Razor rematch.
Let's just rate one-on-one with Razor. That'd be great.
I've got to say, there weren't, despite what the wider community may think, there weren't that many people who really wanted to see them fight Carbide. It's just...
It would have been. I think it would have been really sad, because
some things are a bit too much, and I think the legacy of Razor and everything. The last thing you want to do is kind of sweep it out the arena. It's far too beautiful for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would have been a nice way to go out, but I think at the same time it's like that might be a bit too much overkill. Anyway, we've rambled enough about Heat 1, but I think we've answered all the questions that we
only an hour and 22-minute long video about it.
I knew this would happen.
But it's fine. We didn't go off too much of a tangent. Obviously, this constructor we've mentioned. Shockwave next up. I think from my point of view, that we mentioned it briefly, as a bit of a dark horse. It really turned out to be a really powerful robot and a good drive on it as well.
Yeah, very effective, and all credit to Will Thomas, right? Because not only is he an excellent driver, but he knows how to drive his machine. I mean, that's one thing you got to learn. When it comes to driving, you need to know how your machine works, so then you know how to use it against the right opposition.
Yeah.
And like I said, for example, he knew to take out this constructor straight away. He knew that he had to keep on them. He knew how to get it, and he knew how to get it done quickly. And the same could be said for his matches against Thor, against Foxy, against everybody, really. He knew that he had to get in there, get it done, and get it quick.
Yeah, definitely.
Great credit to him there, especially when he had 2 broken fingers while doing it. I mean, that's pretty damn impressive, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So credit to Will Thomas for that one.
Well, it's interesting about Will, because they really hadn't finished Shockwave in any decent amount of time, and that first battle that you see was pretty much his first run out with the full completed setup. The thing about Will is he's been doing it for so many years that he's symbiotically involved with robots now, and he's just so precise and such an excellent driver in whatever category he's competing in. It's really hard to second guess what he's doing. And it's that turns what some people thought might be a slightly mediocre robot into something a lot more special.
I was going to say, you said on your Facebook post earlier, Dave, that it was the US robot, the Joker. Is that true?
Yes. This is going to. I'll reveal more secrets here. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this after.
Sorry, Robot Wars PR department. We're revealing everything. We're spoiling everything.
No, I've had okay from the PR people. Don't worry.
Okay.
But Will found a guy who was local who had the Joker lying around and sort of offered him it one day. But as I said in the post, you mentioned the Facebook post. None of that robot is the same as it was. The reason they got the Joker was the 2 motors that ended up in Shockwave, which are actually from an old fairground ride, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
They are absolutely enormous, and something like a fifth of the weight is in the motors alone. They are huge.
That's monumental, wow.
Yeah, so basically they took the motors out of the Joker and completely rebuilt everything else. So I kind of hesitate to compare it to the original machine, but its roots were definitely in that one, yeah.
Wow.
And if you go back, if you watch Will's YouTube channel, there's some old fights where it looks more like the Joker than it does now, and they've kind of redone it since then. They basically they entered it into Robot Wars because their other machines, Manta, for example, are all pneumatic flippers. And
I was going to say that there is a lack of pneumatic flippers in the series in general, but I think that's probably because there's so many on the live tour. You have to choose, either the famous ones as a Dan Tom Kia or an Eruption, or like the successful ones like Eruption or TR2 or whatever.
Yeah, well, TR2 and Eruption did a great job of adding something to their machine.
Yes, definitely.
They got it noticed in the application process.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pneumatic flippers were definitely there were too many of them. Everybody knew that. So what Team Shockwave did was decide to build this one instead, and it really worked out for them.
Yeah, definitely. Any further thoughts on Shockwave in this battle? I mean, in this battle alone, I thought Shockwave played a massive role in taking out Tough as Nails. Really, pushing Thor into it and pushing Tough as Nails onto Thor's axe. Really, that was
I personally think Shockwave was the best robot in the fight, and that's no disrespect to any of the 30 robots, but I just personally think performance-wise, Thor was a little lucky in there. And
he nearly drove in the pit, didn't he? Jason nearly drove straight down the pit.
Yes. And again, so did Shockwave.
Well, yeah, it's very true. Moving on.
The thing with, I mean, Shockwave was he just said he really wanted to go out swinging, and there was talk about who would get to the pit button first. Would it be him or Tough as Nails, because they both needed the pit? But I think Will proved that he didn't need the pit. Really, he just got so stuck into the action, and this one was my favourite fight to watch live. It was absolutely superb to watch live.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the crowd for this fight, and watching that was it was excellent stuff. I mean, there was one fight later on in the series which we'll get to when we get to, which I thought was a little bit better. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So Shockwave.
This was a great fight, in all fairness, though. Absolutely fantastic fight.
You have to think, that of the 4 robots, any one of these could have realistically won this heat, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the drivers were aware of that, so they were all gunning for it.
Definitely.
Fantastic.
Next up, we had Thor, Jason Marsden by himself, as we mentioned before, and I'll tell you what, from where he was in Series 6 to now, oh my goodness me!
God, yeah.
What has gone on in that robot? I mean,
he's basically pumped steroids into its batteries and motors and basically everything else. It is a monster.
Thor has been
the gym. It actually made me believe in the axe, because I lost faith in the axe around Series 6 time, because most armor was improving. Apart from Terahertz, none of the axes were really doing much. So of course, to see this Thor come along and just it's brought back my faith in axes. I love me a good axe.
Last week, Chris did say, he felt that the axe was a dying weapon, and in a sense, he is right. I mean, there's only I think 2 or 3 that are like massively successful on the live tours now. I think Terahertz being one of them, and Thor being another. And I think, the fact that this version of Thor, watching it around the arena, it just skates. It was just such a pleasure to watch. It was, it was quick and direct, and Jason deserves an enormous amount of credit for what he's done to that machine.
It's
a single-man team doing that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Obviously he has a lot of help behind the scenes as well, but it's all his design, isn't it? I mean,
it's all Jason pretty much.
Wow.
The thing about Thor for us guys is that we've seen it evolve on the live circuit, and we just couldn't wait for the public to kind of get this view of what it's become. We all knew, like, he was so feared on the live circuit. There's a video of him beating up nuts at one point where he just put his axe through the lid, and that was about it.
Oh dear.
But we've all known about this Thor, and now it's been unleashed, and the reaction he's getting from the public, it's just fantastic, and it's everything he deserves. He's worked so hard.
Oh god, yeah.
And you say that the axe was a dying weapon. I think that was echoed from our point of view as well. But there's been a couple recently that have just caused a resurgence and we'll see a lot more axes next time.
I still find it amazing to this day that no axe wielding robot has won Robot Wars. I still find that a crazy stat. There's been so many successful ones, but hopefully we'll see one in the near future. Our final competitor.
And can I say one more thing about Thor?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sure. Yeah.
What I really like about it as well is the new front, because not only is it an effective axe, but because of that new front, it's an effective bulldozing rammer, which
Yes.
improved in several matches again.
Yeah, it did,
So
definitely.
there you go. Right.
Uh,
Moving on.
You're very, very, very happy when you see the next one.
well,
Oh yes.
Anyway,
I mean,
move on.
my heart goes out to them. I mean, we mentioned before that not that Tough as Nails is a bad robot. It's a very good robot. We just find it a bit dull. But my heart really went out to Tough as Nails for this series because they never really got going.
No, they didn't. They did a good job of holding Thor away for a little bit, but I think they got a bit ganged up on, really, didn't they?
I think again, as we mentioned before, all four robots in that battle could have won the heat quite easily. And I think do you reckon there was a big fear of Tough as Nails as well? I mean, obviously they're very experienced. They were Series 7. They were excellent. I felt a bit unlucky to go out in Series 7 the way they did.
Yeah.
And I think the big problem for them. I think we saw it as well in Series 7 that they do struggle for grip quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think obviously with the steel floor and they've only got very thin tread on their tires. Maybe more treads needed for Tough as Nails in future series.
Well, I think Tough as Nails, I listened to you guys last week, and I know Anderson in particular was saying there's a lot of people who think it's quite dull in a way, that it kind of grabs people, puts them in the pit, and wins that way rather than destroying people.
It's effective, don't you?
I see it as a very clinical way of dealing with it. Like they've built a robot entirely around winning a fight in a completely original way. And when they appeared in Series 7, no one was really sure what to do with them. They kind of came out of left field. They won the heat quite surprisingly. And then
very hard robot to get a hold of as well.
Yeah, well, it's all pincer.
There's no body to hit, really, is there?
It's the pincer equivalent of a full body spinner. Like you just can't attack it in any way. And it's funny what when Jason said on the show that it was only when he got it up the wall and he was able to attack the back bit with the axe of Thor that he was actually doing anything of any effect to it, because he was just bouncing off the body all the time.
Yeah, I think
we can all agree when I say that when it arrived in Series 7, Tough as Nails was probably one of the most original and far ahead of its time robots around.
Definitely. I think it was the first robot to use Hard Ox armor,
which is a main thing in robot combat these days.
Yeah,
I'm a massive fan of that team in particular. They're an amazing group of people.
They came across really well for me in the pits, and obviously they did. They went out and spoke to the crowd, and they were all really friendly. I do feel really bad because as we said before, we're not the biggest Tough as Nails fans. It is a little bit dull, but at the same time, it is so effective, and I hope they come back and do a good job again, because their robot is excellent.
Yeah. It would
have been nice to see them do a bit better.
Yeah, it was that old chestnut from Robot Wars. In the end, the link fell out.
Yeah.
That's
oh god.
That'll kill anyone.
Yeah, but that's sometimes how the cookie crumbles. So going through from that match, we had Shockwave and Thor. Next up, our match of Chimera, Draven, Foxic, and Mr. Speed Squared. So just to kick off with Chimera, as you said, a reserve on the day.
Mm-hmm.
I think, in fairness, I think we mentioned before, it was a little bit expected that they'd probably fall by the wayside, because let's face it, they've got two massive wheels and they're in with a full body spinner. Let's face it, But I think they did well to avoid that much punishment in the first place. But ultimately, it was going to be a case of they're going down.
Yeah, I was going to say, what would you expect from a team death robot? But if I'm right in thinking, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong here, but they did do a heck of a lot of work to it, so to make it their own. If I'm right in thinking.
This is what I like. I will go on public record right now and tell you I love this team. And I love this team for one reason, and it's because they got hold of an old robot from Team Death, as you say, who don't have the best record in the world when it comes to robots.
They're not the most. They haven't got the most pedigree. Let's be gentle here.
Yeah, he's a great guy, Colin, but he's his robots just no. But this team, young Jordan, the driver of the team, is basically one of us lot. He's a big Robot Wars geek who can name everything. He can chat for England about the whole thing. And these guys, instead of sitting around and kind of watching it and going, oh, jolly good fun, they got a robot. They learnt everything from the ground up. They built Chimera to the best of their ability. And they became cannon fodder. But why wouldn't you want to be that when that's your journey into Robot Wars?
I have to say, like, as much as they were cannon fodder, I was amazed that they managed to survive as long as they did. To be honest with you, I thought they were going to be out of the arena within like 10 seconds. To be honest with you, but they lasted a bit longer.
I'd also like to say they've had very much the good old school built in the shed with your father son sort of feel to them. You know what I mean?
It was very early series vibe. There's nothing wrong with that. I do like a bit of a grungy robot. I think we'll get to more later in the series.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I was basically just saying that was another thing I quite liked about it. It had that old series vibe where it was just a couple, some friends or some family members in a shed in the back garden making a robot and having fun together.
Get a big hammer and just hit it and it'll work.
Get a big hammer. Get a button which makes the blade spin.
Oh god, not again.
I mean, absolutely. And the thing with that team is that they could have gone, oh well, that's us. We got wrecked in Robot Wars and jolly good fun. But they're building a new Chimera as we speak. They're not resting on their laurels and going, oh, that was us. We were cannon fodder. That's it. They're still doing it, and that's what I think.
Exactly. I think one of the main things that I love about Robot Wars is like you can see a machine get trashed one year, then come back and be a world beater. I think there's look at Bigger Brother. They got smashed to bits in Series 4.
Yeah.
They were very unlucky, but they still did. But then the next series they came back and it was so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also another thing I think that which really shows the staple of Robot Wars and shows the spirit of Robot Wars is a team that constantly gets mashed up but still comes back every year, because they like to provide the entertainment.
So obviously,
it's just a bit of fun. It's passion, and I tell you what, if you're passionate about this sport, then you're all right in my books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're that passionate about this sport that you will enter a robot that is the best of your ability but not great in any way,
that's the main thing.
Then that's what at least you're going out there and doing it. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, so obviously, Dave, you have to pass a message on to Rory, Alex, and Chris. Make sure that Nuts is fighting fit for next year and ready to get smashed up again.
Well, those guys with their plans. I mean, I won't tell you anything, but their plans are mental. That's
obviously, it would be, wouldn't it? So, moving on from.
Is the plan nuts? Way. Sorry, that's my bad joke.
We have to include one pun for you, Chris. Crit Mastrath out there. We have to include one pun for you. Next up, we have Draven. Haven't seen Draven for a very long time, and it looks very very little difference. But I think it was nice to see it back, and a bit unlucky to get drawn in a tough match with Mr. Speed Square. But I thought he gave a good account of himself, really.
Well, I'll give you an insider story on Draven that has nothing to do with my time at Robot Wars, but I saw Draven try and qualify back in Series 4, I think it was.
Right.
When it was called Anthrax.
All right.
And that was when I was a small boy with aspirations of being on Robot Wars. I was in the crowd at the live qualifiers. And Draven, or Anthrax, drove out into the arena, and it was pitted against Oblivion 2, of all things.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Wiki readers, get note of this. This is golden stuff. This is.
I can wind up the wiki people all day long. But they basically they didn't move, and this is Oblivion 2 came out, hit it a couple of times with the axe, and that was it. Since then, yeah, Oblivion 2.
Sorry. Yeah. Oblivion 2, Jesus Lord.
Best robot ever made.
Yeah.
I think, Sam, when you say Draven gave a good account of itself on Sunday night, I think you're probably right in context of...
Yeah, for the fact that it's only... I think its only ever appearance was against King B on TV, and it didn't really do that well then.
Yeah.
For them to come out again and... Really, I think they were probably going to head through until they met the blade of Mr. Speed Square. I think they probably would have gone through.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they got hit in a. I think they had control problems anyway, and then they just died for some reason. So
I think they thought they were going through as well.
They did. They definitely did. I think it's a shame, but again, these things happen. I'm sure they'll be back, and hopefully we'll see a little bit of a. But with respect to them. the armor, I'm very surprised they kept the armor the same, especially because it's so expensive. Because carbon fiber is not a cheap material to get a hold of, and
Yeah.
it just disintegrates.
But there was a lot of questioning about that in the pits, and they kept the carbon fiber on top for the look of Draven, and then put titanium on underneath for the.
Oh, that's all right then.
But I mean, they were always quite concerned about fighting spinners, and when they were drawn up against Mr. Speed Squared, you saw it on the episode. They said, yeah, we're not particularly happy about that. But
I suppose we should move on to, in my opinion.
Can I just say something about Draven?
Go on, yeah, sorry, go ahead. I'm ignoring you.
Yeah, it was. Sorry, yeah. Forgot I was here, charming that. I don't want to be Chris. Hey. Right, no. It was nice to see them back, but I was a little bit disappointed, especially considering they've still got the problem, right? If you notice on the robot, the bottom of the jaw is what closes. But the problem is because the bottom of the jaw is so much smaller, it has less chance to get grip.
Yeah,
I think it has the potential to be a really effective weapon. It's just the fact, as you said, I think it is just the wrong way around. If they had the top being the moving part, I think it would be a lot more effective. But I'm sure that that they're perfectly aware of that. They don't need us to tell them what's.
They built something interesting, and that's what
yes
this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
exactly.
I think we should move on to the best robot in that fight, in my opinion, Foxic. They were. As we've mentioned already, Craig Danby, God bless him, he's tried so many times to get into Robot Wars. He finally gets on, and then his robot doesn't really work. I feel so bad because I know as much as you two, I'm sure know as well, that Foxic on its day is really, really good. We've seen it fight, last rights and take an absolute beating, and lasted quite a long time relative to some others that fight last rights. And it was such a shame because it's such a pretty robot as well. I'm just like, it's so well made, and it just didn't want to work. But that's just how it is sometimes, I suppose.
I do feel bad for Craig, not only because of that, but because a lot of people keep saying he's either a coward, which is wrong, or a bad driver, which is wrong. Because
I think we'll get onto that.
Been mentioned throughout the show.
I think we'll get onto that towards the end. I think we'll have a big was Craig Danby arrogant or was it just good TV discussion later. I think personally, I think we're all of the opinion it was good TV. I mean,
definitely.
I think the reaction towards him, particularly on Twitter and Facebook, was just ludicrous. I don't really understand it, but
I will say though, so I am a bit upset that Foxic didn't work well because it would have been nice to have seen it go full beans, especially against Mr. Speed Squared. Because I can imagine, obviously, like I said before, wedges, spinner killers always works. It would have been nice to see it go full pelt at them, but unfortunately, we never got to see it.
Dave, I'm sure you've got some very interesting Foxic-related stories to tell us. What have you got?
I could fill a whole podcast.
Should we do a Foxic podcast? Craig, if you're listening, come on sometime. We'd be more than happy to do a Foxic podcast sometime. Dave, carry on.
Well, Craig he's just the unluckiest roboteer the guy was at my wedding, so I'm pretty fond of him. And to see him take the flak wasn't very pleasant.
No, it wasn't.
But his robot didn't perform on the day. This is what happens. And I wrote a post about it that stated, that we can't stop a heat in the middle and go, these robots aren't working out. Let's get some new ones in that might perform better for TV. As Anderson said earlier, it's a sport now, and if two robots are fatally wounded and have to go limping around the ring for 3 minutes, then that's what happens.
I have to say, we'll get to the fight in a minute, but I was there for that fight. I'm just going to say that. I mean, thankfully, it was. I think that fight came after Nuts versus Carbide, so I was a bit spoilt for that. But by the way, Dave, sorry. But I have to say that what I felt that decision went the wrong way.
Yeah.
From what I saw of that fight,
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's discuss that when we get. I've got a fair bit to say about the decision making.
Yeah, so. Definitely.
Oh, lovely! That's even more exciting.
Yeah, it is. Foxic,
it's really not.
Great. I have to say, Foxic, bless it, it tried. I think that's the word we could use. It tried.
I think the really painful thing about Foxic, as you've said, is the potential it has, and when. it's not like it did a nuts and completely disintegrated, which is a lot of fun. It just didn't quite work, and that's really frustrating from all points of view.
Yeah, and I think as we said already, it is a good robot. We just didn't get to see that, and I do hope to God we get to see that next series. If there is a next series, I'm sure there will be. But if there is a next series, I really hope we either get to see Foxic 2 next year. Actually,
yeah, people give Craig some love.
Yeah.
He's built a gorgeous replacement for Foxic.
Yeah, honestly, I'll post a picture of it here. Here it is in its glory, and I love Foxic 2. I think it looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Hashtag love Craig Danby.
Yeah.
Hashtag Foxic wasted. Yeah. I think we'll move on to Mr. Speed Squared at long last, and for the purpose of this podcast, I'm going to refer to it as Speedy because it is a bit of a mouthful. So Speedy, in my opinion, in the first fight was excellent. Watching that, I said I saw that fight as well. It just ripped Chimera apart, and I thought this looks deadly, and it did look deadly, and it was such a shame that again, Team Forzy, they have horrible luck, don't they? They build excellent robots every time they enter, and they get such bad luck.
Yeah.
At least they managed to get on the show most of the time.
Well, that's the thing.
I feel bad for them.
Revenge of Trouble and Strife. I honestly thought that was a potential series winner back in the day. That was honestly the spinning, outer ring on that was awesome, and I always thought this is going to do really well, and it just always seemed to break down.
From a Roboteer's point of view, Revenge of Trouble and Strife is amazing because it contains both gas and
petrol,
pneumatics and electrics. It's like and it has a 30-kilo disc. I think it had.
It was crazy.
The mind boggles as to how those guys managed to do that. It's completely.
I think.
Anderson.
Sorry.
Oh, go on.
I was just going to say. I think that was the main problem with it. It had too much going on at once. That's why it used to break down quite a bit. I think that was its main problem.
I think that was
too much trying to go on for itself.
Yeah, I think that was the mindset behind the team. Particularly Peters. I think he said on the YouTube video that they used to enter Robot Wars. I think they said with Revenge and Trouble and Strife it was a bit too complicated, and that's why it kept breaking down. Yeah. So they thought they'd just focus on just the disc, which I think was the wise choice of the two, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, sometimes, as he said, robots don't always work.
Yeah, those guys really, they were one of the teams that just came out of left field. The community had no idea they were still building. And they put that thing together in 5 weeks purely for Robot Wars. And to do that is phenomenal, in my opinion. Yeah. To do something that kind of original and complicated and that then went on and worked in that first battle is just really admirable.
Absolutely. As we mentioned, Chimera... Yeah, definitely. As we mentioned, Chimera and Draven falling in that fight, and Foxic with some cunning tactics, I think we'll say, and Mr. Speed Squared going through. Our first match saw Thor and Mr. Speed Squared, I think it was that first?
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah, I think that was first. And then, obviously, Thor, again, just so dominant in that fight.
Yeah, that was proof of what I said earlier about it being a good rammer as well as a good axe, because he just wouldn't let them spin up to speed at all. We wouldn't leave him alone. Yeah. And again, that's very good tactics. I mean, Jason's not only just become such a much better robot builder over the years, but he's become a much better driver as well.
Oh, God, yeah.
And his driving was on point in this match, definitely.
Yeah, there's been a lot of praise for Jason's driving to take a machine of that power and to just point it where he wants it.
I mean, I know he mentioned that I think it was a gyro stabilizer inside it, which obviously I'm sure helps an awful lot. But the fact that it has 30 miles an hour top speeds, the only robot I think I've only ever heard of two that have had that kind of top speed, and they were Exterminator and what was it? Terrible in Series 4, I think, had it, because that was because it didn't have any gears. And Exterminator, as much as it was a good robot, it wasn't that well controlled in the early series. And when they slowed it down, obviously, it was a lot easier to control. To have Thor, it was the way that he drove Thor, and it just, it was so accurate and just pointing the axe perfectly every single time. It was just so impressive to see.
Yeah, and this fight against Mr. Speed Squared was just an exhibition, basically. There they didn't stand a hope.
Yeah, I mean, they were limping around, as we mentioned already. They damaged their disc in the first round, or the disc was damaging itself.
Which I've got to point out, Team Chimera are doing that as a victory on their part. Their Facebook page described it as breaking his fist with our own face, which I quite liked.
I like that. No, I think that. Well, I mean, you got to take the small things, I suppose, and I mean, they can take that. They took out Mr. Speed Squared in the long run, a bit like Killy Cranky killing Razor for the greater good.
Thanks, Killy Cranky, from all of us at Team Nut.
But basically sacrificing yourself to do the better justice.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's really much more to say about that fight, is there? I mean, Thor was just dominant, really, wasn't it? Let's face it. And then
a terrific battle.
Oh god,
it's great to watch it.
Definitely entertaining.
Yeah.
Next up, we had Foxic and Shockwave, two very similar designs. And again, I feel if Foxic was at full chat, it would have been a very interesting fight. Sadly, of course, that wasn't the case, and Shockwave, again, pretty dominant in this fight.
Yeah, there was a moment when this fight started when Shockwave went up and over Foxic, where I think you can see how good Foxic would be if it was just working properly. It's so kind of compact and bulletproof, and if it was working to the same degree that Shockwave was working, that would have been a rumble and a half.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well as that, the fact that Foxic has thicker armor than I think I've ever seen on Robot Wars history. Was it 1.5? What was it? 15 mil.
Yeah.
Thick armor, which hard. Is it Hardock's armor? Or is it?
Yeah, Danby doesn't do anything by half measures. He builds really, really small robots that just weigh a ton because it's all armor. It's just
it's 1.
Tanto, everybody.
Tanto. 1.5 centimeter armor is nothing to be sniffed at. You don't normally get things much thicker than say 3, 4, 5 mil.
Yeah, it's like a little bullet, isn't it? It keeps just going flying. Exactly. I was going to say exactly what Dave said. Really, there was several points in that fight where you saw that they were lower to the ground than Shockwave were. So I think if they'd been working at full capacity, they actually had a strong chance of winning that match.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I did like was
unfortunately, Sod's Law is Sod's Law.
Yeah, one thing I did like was Foxic pushing Dead Metal back. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was we really enjoyed that because that was sort of the first time anyone had to go at the house robots, and to see something that small push something that enormous.
I was going to say, and as well as that, it wasn't even running. That wasn't running at full power. It was. No. It was that's seriously impressive. Dead Metal was pushing back, and it's. It doesn't. Let's face it, the new house robots have been pretty much stacked with many roids, many roids, and the fact that Fox was able to push that backwards and. Obviously Shockwave joined in as well, which was pretty nice to see. But yeah.
No, hang on, no, not steroids, steroids.
Okay,
sorry. Have you taken over?
Sorry. I was going to say I'm getting Chris in next week.
My favorite part of this battle was when Shockwave came and kind of upended Foxic into Dead Metal. It's just really, really swish move on Will's part.
That was very clever. That was a great opportunistic.
I got his revenge.
Yeah. I think again, not much really more to say about that. Foxic still not 100% working, and Shockwave really was always going to win that fight with Foxic not 100%.
Yeah.
So we move on to, in my opinion, the best battle of the night. I think by a long, long way, and it was a great fight between Thor and Shockwave. And I thought, well, as I said, this was brilliant. Fast, good tactics. Thor demonstrating again just how strong it is, but Shockwave gave as good as it got. I thought.
Yeah, I think the fact that this one went to judges' decision was a testament to both drivers involved. There were several moments where they were close to the pit, and the damage that Shockwave took isn't. I mean, they purposely put on that scoop so that they could raise it and give Thor something to hit instead of their top, because they were a bit worried he'd gum up the gear train if he actually landed a blow on the top.
Yeah.
So they used their weapon beautifully, I thought. They put on these kind of sacrificial struts and really went for tactics over Will's driving.
Yeah, definitely. And as well as that, I think that, Jason didn't really know what to do with it for a lot of the fight because he didn't fire his axe until it was flipped over and then with dead metal, and then obviously it got a few blows in towards the end when he realised, oh wait, I could just whack the scoop off.
Yeah.
But I think again it was a testament to the fact that Will and Ian really thought outside the box and used tactics that you wouldn't really expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jason was kind of expecting to go in and whack them to death, and then when they arrived with this kind of sacrificial scoop, he was on the back foot a little bit there, and then he, as you say, he realised it would come off quite easily. So.
Yeah, definitely. Anderson, your thoughts?
Yeah. Very great fight, showcasing my 3 favourite points of Robot Wars. Actually, I mean, you guys know me. Well, Sam definitely knows me. I'm a guy who loves back and forth battles, close, great battles. With good use of tactics, driving, and weaponry. And of course, we saw all 3 in that. So I was a very happy boy in that fight. Definitely. Probably even I would go on to perhaps say a definite contender for match of the series so far.
Oh god, yeah. As well as that, we got to see the house robots involved as well. Dead Metal getting involved with Shockwave. Obviously, Matilda ripping off a panel of Thor, which is no mean feat.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah. So as we've seen, we've seen already, the house robots definitely have some beef. Some beefy weapons this time around. It's not a case of say Series 6, Series 7 where like they were a bit ineffective. Matilda. Maybe a little bit.
If we go back to what you guys were saying before about it being a balance between a sport and a TV show, there's been a lot saying that the house robots don't go in and wreck people anymore, and I know that there are plans to kind of counterbalance that if we get a new series. But for this one, the focus from a Roboteer point of view really was on fair play.
Yeah.
And as you guys know from previous series, house robots do not always equal fair play. It was so nice to see them get to do something this week. I think last week, basically, with all the judges' decisions going on and everything, we just kind of never got a chance to see them. There was a point where they were planning to wreck nuts if we died to terahertz, but then we accidentally survived the entire battle, so no one ever got to see that.
Oh, but
on that one, by the way, congratulations for that one.
Yeah, we were very impressed with that. I will say this, okay. One thing I think they could do in future, if you are listening, Robot Wars out there, please pay attention. This is
they're always listening.
This is groundbreaking stuff. This, all right, ready? Next series, keep the 10-second immobilization time, but then have like 30 seconds, but don't like kill the robot, just like rough it up a little bit. Don't kill it, just
push it around,
yeah,
flip it a bit.
Yeah, put it on the flames for a little bit. Put it on the floor flipper a little bit, See, obviously the floor flipper had a. We saw the floor flipper, guys. We completely forgot. We saw the floor flipper work.
Series is now good in my opinion. There you go. We've seen the floor flipper.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. We'll watch again.
There we go.
But yeah,
I think what you guys are saying about the house robots is chiming with what I'm hearing from behind the scenes people as well. I think there's definitely plans to head in that direction.
Obviously we don't want to see them like influence the fights in such a way like say one that springs.
Series 2.
Yeah, one that springs immediately to mind is Ming 3 and Terahertz, where Matilda completely mashed Ming 3 up, didn't it, in the middle of the fight?
Yeah.
I think that's the wrong way to do things. I think obviously if they're pushed in there and then they get mashed up, that's their own fault. You get away as fast as you can. If you can't get away, then it's fair game. But after they're immobilized, say with Behemoth versus Carbide, for example from last week, where Behemoth in the heat final was a bit broken. Let's face it, it was a bit broken. I think there would have been a cool opportunity to see the house robots go in and like mess it up a little bit, but. We'll see if that happens next series. Hopefully, we'll see a bit more of that as the series goes on. I suppose it's time to come to that fight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
I have to say, watching that fight live was yeah. As I said, I think was it the fight before it or the fight before that was you guys versus Carbide, Dave? I think it was the fight before that, wasn't it? I think Thor and Shockwave did fight first.
Yeah.
But. I mean, I understand that both robots were pretty much on their arse, really, weren't they? They were. I think let's face it. I think they both knew at that point. Both Team Danby and Foxy both knew they weren't going to go through to the final. I think at that point it was just kind of obvious that both the robots were fundamentally damaged and couldn't compete.
Yeah.
For that reason, I don't blame them at all. I think ultimately it's just one of those things where fate's conspired against them and technology's let them down. These things happen, okay?
You like Dave said earlier, you can't have an exciting match between two limp robots plodding around, but you can't exactly change it either, really, can you? You have to do it. You have to abide by the rules of the show.
If the one was like fundamentally completely dead, maybe then say in the previous fight, Thor completely ruined Mr. Speed Square, like completely gutted it completely. Obviously, they wouldn't do that because everyone's very very fair. They're not going to go in deliberately just kill the robot. Damage it, yes. Kill it, no. I think
unless your card bites against nuts.
Well, yeah.
Sorry to keep bringing it up.
No, we
worked hard.
Dave still has cold sweats about that every night. No, I think
wake up with Dave molds his face. We adore Team Carbide, and it was such a privilege to be part of that battle. But that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, of course, I think.
Some say Steve Nuts still wake up to the sound of the death hum.
The death hum haunts us for months.
Dear me. I think, and as well as I think it's also now a good time to discuss the whole Craig Danby arrogance versus good TV thing. Okay, I think.
First, let me before we move away from the actual, if I can call it, fight.
Yeah.
Sam, you can probably chime with this, but that fight was much worse in real life. Than the version that went out on TV.
Honestly, okay, I think they cut it down to about 30 seconds, didn't they?
Yeah.
That was 3 minutes, okay? And I think they touched each other twice. And those 2 times at the end of the fight, they were the only 2 times in 3 minutes that they came in contact with each other. Most of the fight, Foxic was stuck underneath dead metal.
Yeah.
We didn't. I think that would have been quite cool to see, actually. It was stuck underneath the claw and it was spinning around, it couldn't get off. I think that would have been quite interesting to see, to be honest with you. But
yeah. I think, considering what happened, I think the editing of this fight was... It's like sweeping up a vase and doing that's broken and just doing your best to kind of piece anything back together.
It was
really do have to praise whoever edited it, because it's like editing the air. Like there's nothing there.
Anderson, I'm not joking. Okay, as Dave mentioned, this was 3 minutes. Okay. And those 2 times were the only 2 times they hit. It was so bad. But again, that's not really either their fault. I did like the fact that Craig, rather than doing nothing, because I don't think he could turn in that fight again, could he? He couldn't turn the robot.
No, he decided consciously. He said after about kind of 30 seconds of it that Foxic wasn't doing very well, that he would go and bury himself in with dead metal.
Which I did appreciate. At least he tried something. He tried something.
Well, this is where we come to judges' criteria.
Yeah. For me, I think this. Watching that whole fight, I thought the decision went the wrong way, because Mr. Speed Square did nothing. At least Foxic went and try and do dead metal. Obviously, it was never going to succeed, but he tried to do dead metal.
Not only that, from what we saw in the actual edited fight, Foxic did the 2 attacks. It was the robot that drove into
Mr. Speed Square.
Mr. Speed Square. So unless, of course, they actually count them purposefully attacking the house robot as bad control, I'm not buying it.
Which I think they did.
This is the thing, because I said on Twitter I thought Foxic should have had that fight.
Yeah.
However, the thing about judges, and it's been the same in this series of BattleBots as well, which I know we're not discussing, but there's been a lot of kind of people... let's say eye-opening decisions.
I think one we can mention is for me at least Mega Tento and Stinger, but we'll get to that another time. We will do a BattleBots review series one day, but not right now. This is
right now. For this one, the judges' criteria is dropped to these 3. It's damage, aggression, and control. They've got rid of style because it never really meant anything anyway.
Yeah,
and
it was an excuse for Razor to win.
Yeah, and having 4 criteria. Having 4 criteria makes no sense, because you can score 2 for one and 2 for the other, and then you're just back to square one.
Yes.
So what we've got here is 3.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly from when we read the rules, the top criteria is aggression.
Yeah, they changed it.
Yeah, and what they do is each judge gives a score out of, I can't remember how many, for each category, and it is then multiplied more for aggression than it is for the other 2 criteria.
If I remember correctly, it was so every 1 point for aggression counts as 3, every 1 for damage is 2, and every 1 for control is 1.
It's something along those lines. Yeah. And if you take this fight and you look at it through the eyes of a judge who has to be exactly the same, whether they're judging the closest battle ever or whether they're judging whatever this was.
This one.
You start
robot ballet.
Yeah, exactly. But you start to see, I think this fight is very important for guys to kind of see what it takes to be a judge, because like Anderson said, if you're doing control, Foxic drove into the house robots, that's a match, a knock against it, whatever the fight is, whether they do it on purpose, whether they attack on purpose, whether it's to entertain the crowd, it's still a control issue.
Yes.
If you look at damage, Foxic was caused damage by dead metal after it drove in.
Yes.
It wasn't scored by its opponent, but it still got damaged. Aggression, I would give to Foxic all day long, and I think because there's so little in this fight, people just they go, well, Foxic got the 2 hits on, that's the aggression, that should be the defining factor. But when you take the 3 factors into account, then the judge's decision starts to make a little bit more sense.
It was. I think
still kind of.
Let's face it. I think. I mean, I remember vividly that there was a few judges' decisions while we were while I was at the filming, and I think that one was the longest one I've ever seen. It was. They were there for a good 5, 6, 7 minutes.
And it was a split decision. It was 2 judges for one and 1 for the other. So I'd love to know what the breakup of that was and who fought what. But it was. I mean. Yeah, I think when you study it in as nerdy a detail as I have, it does kind of start to make sense. But from an outward point of view, I think Foxic probably had it.
Yeah, as I said, let's face it, it was never going to be an easy match to call because they were both pretty useless. Let's be real. But I think that's just ultimately how it is.
Yeah, they may as well have gone into the pits and looked at the robots on the table and judged them on that.
Literally, it was genuinely that bad. As I mentioned a second ago, I think it's now time to discuss the Craig Danby situation. I'm so annoyed the fact that so many people have said, "Oh, it was arrogant to take on dead metal when Mr. Speed Squared was there." Let's face it, he couldn't really control Foxic at that point, and I think at least he tried something.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, the amount of people that genuinely thought he was being seriously overcocking confident. Obviously, he's not. You can clearly tell the whole time. I think it was Chris and Craig with him as well. They're just laughing the whole time at him, just laughing at him almost.
Chris and Sam.
Oh, sorry.
Sam in particular. Sam's a great friend of mine, and he did nothing that entire weekend but laugh his face off. Being on Robot Wars with Craig is just the most entertaining experience. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
because he was quite clearly being the over the top pompous Muppet. That was basically what he was trying to do. Because he knew his robot wasn't that powerful, but he was sort of going for a parody of, let's say, Ray Billings with Tombstone, who knows his robot's over the top.
I believe
his robot's overly powerful.
I believe he said before the series started. I think it was, I can't remember where it was. I remember seeing him post it on Facebook somewhere. But he said, I'm going to go full Ray Billings this series, and I was like, that would have been great.
Craig and Ray know each other, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they fought each other last year, didn't they?
And Craig went to America, which is more than most of us have done. Craig didn't go to America using BattleBots' money. Craig went to America using his own money.
On his own back, yeah.
Yeah, and his first fight ever in America was Tanto against what is now Minotaur.
Oh God!
Lasted all of 3
yeah, that was amazing.
There was me going I've known the guy for years. The guy was at my wedding, and he said, "I'm finally doing it. I get to go to America and fight." And then we got the stream of that first fight, and it was just Craig,
what went wrong for that?
It's literally, it's one hit and Tantor just disappears. It's actually in BattleBots. If you watch the first...
I've seen the picture of it like over the wall. It's just like,
I actually sent Sam a link to the actual fight because it's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube somewhere.
And then he went back, he did it all again with Foxic and stood up to Ray Billings in terms of armor very, very well.
I was going to say, like, most people that come out against Last Rites come out in a bin bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Foxic did not come out in a bin bag. It came out relatively intact.
Yeah, and literally nobody in this side of the community has anything but praise for Craig. Like all the American guys, all the British guys. I've got to set this straight, by the way. Last week, he was the one who helped us fix Nuts after the Carbide fight. And you can see that in this episode. There's a shot of him in the booth and he's covered in red grease. That's the grease from Nuts.
Yeah.
That's not his own blood.
Yeah, I thought it was when we were there, but
he hasn't killed one of his team members. That's our blood.
He's not a cannibal.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that I find really upsetting is why everyone turned around. First of all, said he was inexperienced. He's been around since 1998, guys. Come on, that's not inexperienced. And secondly, they turned around and said that he was a bad driver, and it's like, but they mentioned several times throughout the episode, Foxic isn't working properly, but what was it about that nobody could understand?
Yeah,
it wasn't his driving; it's just the robot not working.
I would state if you can drive a not working robot as well as Foxic was driven in that episode, you're probably quite a good driver, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely. It brings me to the point I want to bring up here. Okay, Craig, obviously, we've mentioned many times. I honestly thank you for at least trying to get Foxic going and trying to give us a little bit of entertainment with it before ultimately it was never going to happen, but at least trying to get it going. Second of all, go full villain next series. I want to see you become like the new Rob Knight. I want to see you like fully giving it everything and giving it large and really getting on the crowd's eye. I want to see you like getting the boos. I want to see you like really taking it like an absolute champ and just like fully getting on the crowd's back. I want to see you do that. I'd love to see that.
We told him
get quite a lot of booze at the pub.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, dear me.
We already told him he has to get a cape and a mustache and go around. I am Craig.
Yes, he has to have a cane and a cat on his lap.
Yeah.
He has to have those and a weird monocle.
Yeah.
I think he is. I mean, he was genuinely affected by last night, but I think knowing Craig as I do, once he's picked himself up. And he'll get back into it, and he'll embrace this role that's been kind of thrust upon him.
Yeah.
And he's like, as you say, you're going to put up a picture of new Foxic. It's absolutely gorgeous. And if we want to be supporting anyone for a return, like a fully working, brilliant Foxic is what everyone wants, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And so, in summary, go full villain and make sure you win next series. No pressure. I think
unless you're fighting me.
Wow, we'll get on to that next series. Obviously, Thor versus Foxic again, pretty one-sided, but at least Foxic was working for this fight.
Yeah, it's not quite clear what Craig was trying to do in this fight on the TV, but he said if he raised his blade up from the very start, that if Thor's hammer came down, that it would snap.
I kind of guessed that was the kind of tactic he was going for.
Do you think that could have happened? Like, do you reckon it would have happened, or is that probably a bit wishful thinking?
I don't think it's as mad as it sounds. There's two interesting points to this. One is that Craig once fought Terahertz with Tantor and managed to do exactly that. He snapped the axe off.
Wow.
There's a picture of him on Facebook holding it, just with this. Now, I think Terahertz had fought a lot. There was a lot of kind of fatigue there and stuff, but Craig's armor is so thick that this axe came down and just snapped off.
Oh, wow.
There was also the thing that, and you can see it if you watch the episode again and you look very closely, you can see Thor's axe was bending.
Yeah, it was bent because of, I'm guessing, the amount of pressure behind it in the first place. Yeah.
Jason joked about taking it off and turning it upside down so it bent back the other way to straighten it out again. But no, and Jason had a spare axe as well, so there was kind of this thing that, Foxic, Craig said he was already out, and they were going, well, maybe we'll do this theatrical thing where we try and break Thor's axe. And Jason was wary enough of it to not want to give it a go. So as much as it, is it hype? Is it not hype? Who knows? We never got to see it, but I don't think it's quite as outlandish as it sounded.
Yeah.
I think it was a bit of
gamesmanship.
It was like a basically yeah. It was a bit of a what's the word? Subtle, over the top.
It was. I think it was.
That could work.
Yeah, a bit of like.
Makes any sense.
Bit of like
subtle
almost,
over the top.
Yeah, sort of like it's almost like goading,
weird.
like it's sort of like trying to dare him into it, like see if like have you got big enough balls to try it in the first place?
Exactly.
Yeah,
which is why he shouted coward at him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he called him a coward. He called him a coward so much after that fight. It was very funny in the pits to just hear, Jason, you're a coward, like every 3 seconds. It's just, as I say, doing Robot Wars with Craig is an absolute delight. So, people should just lay off him. He's a showman, and he made that episode with a broken robot.
I was gonna say, like, as much as Foxic didn't perform very well, everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine what he's going to do when he actually gets it working.
God. So, ladies and gentlemen, if next series,
we need to get him into action, mate. We need to get him into action.
Come on. Yeah, we'll see what we can do. And obviously, that final fight of the group stages saw Mr. Speed Squared, or Speedy. I haven't actually called it Speedy once. Speedy against Shockwave. Again, pretty one-sided. Speedy not quite working again, really.
Yeah.
There was one little worry. Shockwave's chain came off again.
Yeah.
But to be honest, Will's such a good driver. I don't think it really. Although again, just to show how amazing Will's driving is, he very nearly went straight in the pit and did that amazing little drift thing. So it just stopped. So it literally just drifted and just stopped right there and then. And I thought that was absolutely.
I will say as well,
great. It was so.
Had Mr. Speed Squared had the chance to like rev its disco, I think it was working at least partially better than what it was in the previous two fights. I think had it had the chance to speed up, it probably would have taken the scoop off again.
Yeah, I would say that maybe it would have taken a chunk out of Shockwave, but I don't think Shockwave was in any real danger apart from that moment when he nearly drove in the pit. There's so much when you're driving these massive robots in competition, there's so much adrenaline going, and people go, oh, why did so-and-so just drive into the pit? It's not always as easy as it looks on TV. I was going to
say, I'm fairly sure that, like, as well as that, I mean, I know the angle nowadays is a lot better to see the pit. I know in series gone by, the angle you were at was horrible because you couldn't really see that it had gone down properly, I'm fairly sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still, it's a lot bigger now. It's easier just to knock a wheel over and not notice it, and then you're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and
there's still no excuse though for John reading Killer Act. I'm sorry, John, but there's just no excuse. I didn't see it. Come on.
No, if you're talking about terrible fights of yesteryear, that's terrible for all the right reasons.
It was just worse. Yeah, see, there are worse fights than Foxic and Mr. Speed Squared. There you go.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's go back to Warthog versus Napalm.
God.
I mean. What was that?
Sam versus Spawn again. Oh my lord!
Don't get okay, Dave. You won't know this. I have a massive bug about Spawn again in Series 6. It was. I know. It's a lot easier said than done to get it working, but my God, it was awful. And yeah, less said about that. Let's just not get involved in that. So obviously, Speedy went down the pit once again, pitted by Shockwave, and Shockwave went through to the heat final.
I think Mr. Speed Squared did a great job considering. I think the driving was quite exemplary, but it just didn't have the potency.
With Team Forzy, once again, the weapons clearly there, but in terms of like the reliability and the grip, if you like, it just wasn't. It's still a bit lacking. I mean, hopefully they can rectify that in a few years, but I think they're a bit of a glass cannon, if you like. Go out and cause as much destruction as possible, even if it means killing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
bit like Nightmare and at 259 and things like that. It does more damage to itself than it does the opposition sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Robot Wars has every place for these crazy things that don't work as much as it does for the crazy things that do work. So
Yeah, absolutely.
everyone out there needs to keep building these mad machines because that's what we want to see.
Absolutely. And it brings us to, in my opinion, I genuinely, this is one of the biggest shocks in Robot Wars history. I genuinely think that because
I quite enjoyed baiting you about this on Twitter.
I tweeted out just before the fight started. I thought only one winner here, and I said Thor, and then Dave just pops up. I was like, really? And
literally, because me and Sam were actually Facebooking each other as this was going on, and he literally just sent me, well, there we go, we've got a heat final, and well, the Thor's obvious winner, and then literally, 30 seconds later,
I posted the gif of Homer Simpson just disappearing into the hedge.
Yeah.
I was there like, oh no. So I'm eating my humble pie now. Thor dumped in the pit. I can't believe it. But
in all fairness, right, this is one of those things where again I give credit. Thor, right, experienced robot, been around for yonks, very good machine. Second in the world if you think about it. Being runner-up in the world championship.
Yep.
Loses to a robot that got built what, like 10 weeks prior, had no prior battle experience before this heat started.
Yep.
So huge credit goes out to their team again for building such a great robot in that aspect, but also huge credit once again to Will. 2 broken fingers, and he was able to get a one-hit KO on Thor, pretty much.
Yeah.
There's 2 things There's 2 things I really want to say about this fight. One is that this is what makes Robot Wars amazing, is that this heat in particular was just crazy. And once you think you've kind of got everything sussed out, and we've come out of this mad whirlwind of group stage, which has the worst fight ever and some of the best fights ever, and these 2 kind of champions emerge from it, and you go, oh well, I know where this is going, and it still manages to curveball.
Yeah.
One of the best bits about it is the shocks. It always has been. One of the best things has been the shocks.
Everyone loves, David killing Goliath, and I think this is again, I can't stress enough that I can't really think of a moment in Robot Wars history off the top of my head where I thought, oh, this is just a slam dunk win, and it goes the other way. Except for maybe Nasty Warrior against Hypnodisc, but we'll get that's
one of my favourites.
But I think again, credit to Jason. He was very sporting. Right from the start. As I think you mentioned this in your Facebook post earlier, Dave. I'm going to put a link to that in the description. By the way,
go for it.
It's a really fascinating read. Thor and Jason in particular. Jason wants to win Robot Wars so badly.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing with Jason is Jason wants to win like nobody else, and yet there is not a hint of kind of ego or aggression.
No, he wants to win, but he wants to win properly.
Yeah, and the other thing about this fight that doesn't come across on the TV is that Thor actually dies in this fight.
Yeah, like my friend, I was speaking to another friend of mine while this was going on, and he said straight away, as soon as Thor got hit into the wall.
Yeah.
Like you can see straight away, like it wasn't driving forward. The axe was still working, but the drive was broken. I think I can't remember who it was. One of the teams on Twitter said that that the speedo broke, the speed controller broke.
It's actually a bit of a mystery to all of us.
Really?
They hit the corner, and something called an FET on the speed controller blew, which is why the axe was still working, but the drive wasn't. Right. And it's the equivalent of the removable link falling out. It's it's stone dead, and as much as we were so hoping for a great fight in a rumble, and it's quite it's a bit of a shame to see Thor kind of go out in that way after all it had achieved through the heats.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, it's what made this heat quite special. It's like
it was also
yeah.
I think
it was also very short but sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit like
the fights. It was still a good fight.
Yeah, definitely. I think as you said, it would have been nice to see them, fully going for. I mean, we didn't even mention the fact that they put the old scoop back on for Shockwave, and they thought, oh, let's, it's probably going to be the end for us. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
And they somehow,
Will was not confident at all. Like the heat finals weren't shot kind of the same time as the
No,
rest.
I believe they were filmed the week after, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Will broke his fingers.
Yep.
Went home. You're not allowed to touch the robot. Some of the robots stayed at the arena, so there's none of this kind of going home and fixing it malarkey. You have to fight with what you came out with.
You had many sleepless nights.
yeah, exactly. And it was one of those where he lost to it previously so kind of badly.
Yeah.
He just held on to a judge's decision, and judge's decision doesn't save you in the final. So he went with the idea of putting up a great fight, but he thought that they were going home, and then to kind of hit it and for it to end so quickly.
Yeah,
was stunning for him as well as the rest of us. It was such good TV.
I think as well. The one thing I can take solace for, because obviously my personal, obviously Chris mentioned last week his thing for Robot Wars is bar spinners. Mine is always axes. My favorite robot of all time is Terahertz.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I will never forgive you, Dave. I'm never going to forgive you.
You could have just gone in the pit, couldn't you, mate?
You could have just driven in.
I wasn't, blame Rory for that.
Send him a nasty message. Send him a nasty message from me.
My minibot wasn't even running at that stage. I was gone.
I will say,
was your one with Reza was here? Was that your one?
That made me laugh so much.
We got into a bit of trouble about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we wrote that on in all good faith. We thought it was very funny. And then Simon Scott came over and said, "Do you know you've spelt razor wrong?"
Oh.
And we kind of went, yeah, it's sort of a thing. And he went, "Oh, okay," and walked off. And then me and Alex just kind of turned and cringed to each other going, "Oh, no."
I mean, obviously, if you don't, out there on YouTube, if you don't know what this is, basically, obviously, everyone is the world's biggest Razor fan. Everyone thinks that they were robbed against Tornado, etc., etc., etc. And because of this, everyone's kind of like not bagging on Razor, but like kind of taking the bit that people spell it wrong all the time and things like that. And I thought it was so funny. It was just, it made me.
People thought it was 2 Z's and an O.
It's nothing to do with Razor. It's
the fans of Razor.
Yeah, it's this thing that they say, "Oh, it's my favorite robot ever," and then spell the name wrong. But
yeah.
Well, you
clearly not.
Yeah, exactly. So
I didn't realize. I got a picture of it on my phone, and I noticed in the corner. I completely forgot to mention this. It had I flew on Behemoth as well.
Yeah, I flew Air Behemoth, which was
yeah, this was
the one in the. Yeah, that was incredible. I was just bumbling around the arena, and suddenly my robot was at eye level in the booth. I was like, "Oh, hello."
Speaking of Behemoth, I think ultimately, I mentioned this to Anderson briefly. Obviously, Dave, I'm fairly sure you're not allowed to say about this, but I'm fairly sure this will now guarantee Thor the wild card unless someone goes out and wins all 3 head-to-heads on a knockout and then loses in the heat final.
I was going to say the same myself. It would be nice to see Behemoth get the wild card. I don't think it's going to happen just simply because of how well Thor did. I mean, it won all 3 of its fights. It got the most points out of any robot so far in the series. Unless a robot gets 3 distinct KOs in the future, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think there's going to be any arguments there. If it doesn't get a wild card, I still think Thor would make a good seed in the new series if they have seeds again.
Definitely. I think as well as that, I think we mentioned last week that the best robot won the heat in Carbide, in my opinion. I think this week it didn't, because I feel like over the course of the show, Thor was clearly head and shoulders above the rest, but at the same time, that doesn't always mean a thing, does it? Obviously sometimes you get
reliability above anything.
Absolutely.
You can be a great driver, you can have a great weapon, you can have great armor, but if your robot does not work, you're buggered.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, Jason, yours decided to not work at the wrong point.
Yeah, definitely. But
I mean, as you say, I'm not allowed to say, and I'm not even going to go near it.
Yep.
All I will say is that every time in this series you think you have something nailed down,
something pops up.
Something else comes along, and We've seen it, Heat 1 was an exhibition of what Robot Wars, the reboot, is all about. Heat 2 is a big mixed bag where nobody's quite sure what's going on. I can promise you it only gets worse from here, guys.
Oh dear. Well, that's going to make things really interesting for us. Anyway, that brings the end of Heat 2. I think we'll quickly preview Heat 3. Obviously, the competitors are Big Nipper, Dan Tom Kia, Glitter Bomb, King B.
Just a quick question. Our rating?
For me, 8 or 9.
9 out of 10. I'm going for a full 9 out of 10 this time.
Dave, from a spectator point of view, what would you say it was?
Well, for me, when we filmed it, this was probably the worst of the 5 heats. But the way it went out last night was, I think the production on it, the team have done brilliantly, and I had such a laugh watching it back.
Yeah.
And I've watched it 3 times to prepare for this talk, and the second time was even better. Like the first time I was hyped and kind of shouting at the screen and all that.
Yeah,
the second
definitely.
time watching it in kind of calm isolation, it really is quite a decent fist of a heat. So
yeah, definitely.
Not as good as ours,
because you were in it, obviously.
I was in it.
You combed your jacket. Let's face it. Come on.
Well, you've got to comb the jacket.
Yeah. Do you use any conditioner on those jackets? Out of curiosity, or is it just a natural fur?
It's wash, rinse, and then repeat, as Homer Simpson would say.
Oh, there you go.
It was fantastic. It's an 8 out of 10 for me, because I want room for the other 3 heats, and there's some very special things coming up. I promise you.
Yeah,
it doesn't settle.
Yeah, there's certainly some interesting fights in the next. As we mentioned, Big Nipper, Dan Tom Kia, Glitter Bomb, King B, Remix, Orte, Overdoser, Supernova, and TR2.
It's all right, Overdoser.
Oh mate, Robot the series. Dave, obviously, again, you can't reveal much about it. I'm fairly sure, I think, you've been pretty much prohibited from saying anything about it, really. But coming into the series, of those, who would you have least liked to have fought? Who did you think, bloody hell, they've turned up and that's going to absolutely do some work? Who do you think was going to really turn up and do well?
I know a lot of people were worrying about Supernova. Like when they were announced, it's because on the live circuit we didn't have spinners.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard to know what to do against them.
Particularly now, because as you said, spinners aren't allowed on the live tour due to safety reasons. And
currently, yeah.
Hopefully that will change in the near future. We might see that next year. And obviously, in terms of everyone, my mum came with us to Scotland to go watch this, and she said everyone has got exposed wheels, and that's because there's no spinners to fear. And obviously in the arena there is.
Yeah.
Was it a bit of a jarring thing coming back and fighting spinners again? Was it kind of like, we're not used to this. This is something completely new for us.
Well, I think everyone, we're all aware that spinners are there. Like the live circuit, they'd all go, if they suddenly bring spinners back, what are you going to do? So it's always been kind of at the back of the mind. But Robot Wars, the reboot, came about so quickly that people kind of went, well, do I want to fight spinners? And if the answer was no, you didn't apply. So you kind of went, well, we're going to have to.
Yeah.
And then you hear kind of rumblings that robots like Supernova have applied, and you kind of go looking on their previous battles. I know they're not the most successful in terms of progress through the heats, but like what they did to kill a lot with Storm 2 in that Series 7 battle.
Definitely. I mean, as we mentioned before, Supernova is not the most successful, but it on its day, it can turn when it turns up. It really is quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, it is also a former world number 2.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Think about it. So.
And then there was the guys from the live circuit, obviously. So Big Nipper was always very predominant and won it one year on the live circuit.
Yeah.
And TR2, which is one of the best flippers going. And then when we actually got to Robot Wars and we found Big Nipper had actually put a disc on, which nobody knew about. And then you've got Orte, which is
sneaky buggers.
They kept it very quiet. And then you've got Orte, which is ex-Bigger Brother. It's the new Bigger Brother coming through. My favourite team in the next heat is Team Glitterbomb.
They were such good fun. Like, obviously, it's a completely new robot. It looks pretty similar to Edgehog, as myself and Anderson have mentioned before. But
like I said, it's got the same axe mechanism.
Yeah, elements of Edgehog, we say, but I mean, that team to me are epitomising what new generation Robot Wars is about. It's about getting the girls involved. It's about getting the families involved.
Yeah,
and it's about having this kind of running theme through your robot. Like they've painted it pink, but then they've also gone for the mascots and they've gone for the PR on Twitter and stuff. And it's just a whole package. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah.
So they're my favourites in the next heat. But yeah, the next heat is so full of kind of big hitters that you don't know where to look.
I would say, like, obviously, my tip for the series before we start this was TR2, so watch it flop in round 1. But as you know, obviously as impartial, looking at those robots like purely from an outsider's point of view, who did you think coming into the series, they're going to win this heat? Or was it more of a case of I have no idea, I'm just going to see what happens?
Yeah, I think this heat more than any was kind of, you'd go, oh, I definitely think Dan Tomke's got a shot, and then you'd go, oh, but Big Nipper's in there, and Supernova's in there, and then TR2 who do so well, and it kind of, the more you thought about it, the harder it became to kind of predict anything. And of course, when we saw the name Orte on a bench, we had no idea it was the new Bigger Brother.
Yeah.
Like we knew nothing about any of that. So then they turned up and we went, oh, there's another one in that heat who might do. So, it's like put them all on a dartboard and
see what comes up. See what comes up.
Yeah. Although Overdoser for me is the,
Yeah, it's obviously going to win. I mean, come on. Mate,
yeah.
If Nasty Warrior Splinter can get into Hypnodisc, then surely theirs can.
I'll tell you something about Overdoser in case you ban me from next week. But Overdoser got into this series of Robot Wars by putting on their form, we have no idea how to build a robot.
I love that.
And the producers said that's what we want. We want to have a team on who have no experience. They're not off the live circuit. They've never done Robot Wars before. So this robot isn't, I mean, obviously looking at it, it doesn't look like the most competitive machine. It looks like something that was rejected from Series 2.
We said exactly the same thing.
The message behind Overdoser is so important, especially for series coming forward.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to make someone get in the garage and go, well, I can do better than that, or I can do the same as that. And look, they will still offer you a place if you put your case forward.
I think that's ultimately the point.
I was tweeting through the episode yesterday, and I had a chat with Dr. Lucy, the judge, at one point.
Yeah.
Because there was a woman who said that she really wanted to build one, but she can't weld.
Yeah, but you don't need to. There's no need to.
Yeah, I said, I can't weld. And the whole purpose of my next machine, I've built the entire thing with a jigsaw, a drill, and a grinder. And that's it. All the electronic part is basically a jigsaw. Like, it's not as complicated as people think. The majority of parts, as long as you buy the right parts, they tell you where to plug things in, they tell you what to do. There's plenty of roboteers out there who will tell you how to connect two wheelchair motors up so they run on remote control. Like, it's becoming a point where if you really want to do it, then
there's no reason not to.
Yeah, and that's what Overdoser is about in this next heat, and hopefully will extend to further series.
Absolutely. I think that has wrapped it up very nicely. Thank you all very much for watching. We should see a good heat. Anyway, I've been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been Anderson 9132. A big thank you to Dave.
Yeah,
for,
honestly,
coming on to the show.
A huge
great,
thank you.
Mate.
A huge thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem. I've been Philippa Forrester. I've been Dave.
And we'll see you next week for Heat 3. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
I'll bring the lime jacket along next week.
Yes! That's what I was asking for.
Yes. I want to see a picture of you with it.
That's going to be the thumbnail. Take care, guys. Goodbye.
All right, bye.
Goodbye.